More of the mystery surrounding Australia's worst naval disaster is being solved thanks to the most powerful supercomputer in the Southern Hemisphere. HMAS Sydney was lost at the height of the Second World War in 1941. All 645 members of the crew died. Its final resting place was one of the nation's great wartime mysteries until 2008, when the Sydney and its attacker, the German raider Cormoran, were both found off the Western Australian coast. Now, a project using hundreds of hours of video and 500,000 photographs is helping produce a first-of-its-kind 3D reconstruction of this piece of Australian history. Here's Lauren Day.
HMAS Sydney was a very famous ship during World War II. It had recently just had a very successful campaign in the Mediterranean, and it came back to Australia to great fanfare and more menial duties of chaperoning troop ships off to Europe. And it was one of those duties that it left Fremantle, went up to the Sunda Strait near Singapore, and on its way back it encountered the German vessel, the Cormoran.
This encounter would be the last for HMAS Sydney. After a short but fierce battle, both ships sank. All 645 crew on the Sydney and about 100 men from the Cormoran died. Their final resting place would remain a mystery for decades.
There it is. That's a 4-inch. That's one of the 4 inches, and it's trained outboard. Look at that.
These were the first crude images taken in 2008 of the watery graves of the two ships and more than 700 men.
What's the water depth?
And the moment a 70-year-old mystery was solved.
2468. we can ROV it. 2468.
2,500 metres below the water, 200 k's off the West Australian coast, the wrecks would remain out of reach to the public. But 8 years later, researchers returned to the site in the hope they could change that.
We applied a number of imaging technologies and cameras that were new to market, and also took the opportunity to run a parallel science mission with the project as well.
That science mission involved sampling sediment, water and rust. But the main goal was to virtually bring the wrecks themselves back to the people in the form of a 3D reconstruction.
We've collected around 500,000 photographs and around 300 hours of high-definition video, and much of that in 3D. So there is a wealth of material to work through. The amount of time it would take us to process 500,000 photographs using our conventional techniques, using a standard computer, would take about 1,000 years. So we needed to do something to bring that time down to something achievable.
Enter the most powerful supercomputer in the Southern Hemisphere.
So why is it so noisy in here, David?
What you're basically hearing is the fans that basically cool the machines. The big problem with supercomputers is they consume a lot of power and generate a lot of heat.
If you gave all 8 billion people on the planet a hand calculator, it would take them over 10 years to do what Magnus does in a second.
The researchers tapped into that power to process around 50 terabytes worth of data.
What they've got is a piece of software that can do pattern recognition. It can try and stitch those photos together to reconstruct in 3D the wreckage itself. The problem is this is a very compute-intensive process. They have tens of thousands of photos that they have to compare to tens of thousands of other photos, and it's easy for Magnus to do that in parallel.
Now history meet the future.
So there's the anchor, Tom.
Yes.
Tom Fisher is the last surviving crew member from the Sydney.
I was put on in Fremantle, my first ship, and I felt very proud.
Tom was transferred off the ship just weeks before its fatal final voyage. He still remembers when a telegraph operator gave him the news.
One came to me and said, "You shouldn't be wearing that cap band because your ship is lost, it's sunk." And I wouldn't believe him. I was shocked. I just couldn't believe it. It's off the coast of Western Australia, and to be lost There was no action there, no enemy action.
That shock turned to grief and was then dulled by the decades into nostalgia. A feeling revived by seeing the ship resurrected in 3D. What was it like seeing the ship today for the first time in 75 years?
Well, romantic. Because especially it's so clean and beautiful, no weed on it or anything.
It's believed to be the most advanced project of its kind, and the 3D reconstruction is expected to be available to museum goers in about 3 years. But it doesn't end there.
Potentially, we can also print the 3D models. So we're working towards the ability to create physical reproductions of artefacts from the sea floor. The site is protected by the Historic Shipwrecks Act, and we are not allowed to remove any artefacts from the site, but these techniques allow us to reproduce items that look physically the same as the real thing.
For most, it's history they can only imagine. For Tom Fisher, it's the technology of the future that helps him remember.
Well, it brings back the different actions we were in and associating with the men I lived with and fought with. 75 years, and I'm the only one alive now that took part in that. Sometimes my memory misses a bit, but 75 years is a long time.
That report from Lauren Day, and that's all we have time for tonight. I hope you can join me again tomorrow, but for now, have a great evening. Good night.